Hello, and welcome to What's Your Story? We're so delighted to have a special guest today. Her name is Paula Sheridan, and we've been trying to get her online with us for quite a long time. Paula is a businesswoman. She's an author. She's just amazing. I mean, there's so many wonderful things to tell about her. But we want to get right into the interview with her, and we'll let her tell you a lot about herself as well. Welcome, Paula. So nice to have you with us today.
Thank you, Judy. It's wonderful to be with you, and thank you for bearing with me. And it's just a delight that I finally made it to your show.
Well, we know you're on the other side of the world, and it's we've had trouble getting connections. And your poor kitty. How's your kitty? You had to take your kitty to the vet.
It's very sad. He's 5 years old, and he was diagnosed with leukemia about 3 or 4 months ago, and he was given just a few months to live, or a few weeks, in fact. And he's lasted a few months, so he's a real little Viking. He's going strong, but he's got sort of cancer cells all around his lungs. So unfortunately, he has a real problem breathing, and every now and then he struggles to breathe. And so we just have to be very careful with him. And any little thing, just a little bit of playing, gets him out of breath and gets him overexcited. So we just take him care. But he might not be with us for too long, so he's very precious. So
I'm so
thank you
sorry.
for caring about him.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. You know, I lost my kitty this year. I had him 23 years, and it was horrible. I mean, it's like losing a member of your family. So you have my condolences. I'm so sorry that you're going through this.
Thank you.
But today we
Thank
want to
you.
talk about your book. You've written
Yes.
an incredible book entitled Finding Primrose. And this is a book about your grandfather and about the fact that he only got his identity documents just a year before his passing. Now, when we say identity documents, a lot of people around the world might not be sure what that is. Having lived in South Africa myself, I know what identity documents are. You know, you have to carry that with you most of the time so that people can see, and it puts everything in it, like your driver's license and all of those kinds of things. But tell us about your grandfather and about the book, and what made you write it, because it's an incredible book.
So he's officially not my grandfather. He's a grandfatherly figure, but I call him my grandfather. So his name is Penrose Matsile. He was actually born Tiki Penrose Matsile, and he was born in somewhere in Lesotho. He wasn't exactly sure. He's passed away now, but he wasn't exactly sure. He kind of said it was sort of somewhere in the mountains, and he sort of thought it was somewhere near Maseru. And I grew up with him, and when I was about 20, I said to him one day, I had ordered some books and bought some books on creative writing, because I'd always wanted to be a storyteller, and I wanted to learn the art of writing. And I said to him, and he was asking me, "What are you doing, Paula?" And I said to him, I'm learning how to write stories. And so I said to him, "Penrose, I'm going to write your story one day, because you've got an amazing story." And he said, "Oh, there's nothing to tell about me. There's no." And actually, the story that's now come out is amazing. So he didn't have his identity, and he at the time, he couldn't remember where he was actually born. He had the exact village, and he couldn't remember the date that he was born. He couldn't remember his birth date. So he went through majority of his life not knowing his birth date or the place that he was born. And in South Africa, during the time of troubles that there were, African people had to actually carry this ID book. In fact, everybody had to carry this ID book. But African people couldn't come into certain areas and without this particular document, which was called a Dom Pass in those days, a horrible name. And Penrose didn't have one of these, and he couldn't get one of these purely because he didn't know his ID, he didn't know his birth date, and he didn't know his town of birth. So because he didn't have those two important things, very vital bits of information, he couldn't actually apply for, this particular piece of paper. And over the years, he came to work with my gran, and he became a part of our family. And for many, many years, we kept trying to get, trying to find this information. My gran wrote off to various departments trying to find this very important bit of information so we could go and apply and to get his Dom Pass. And we couldn't get it. And then finally, just a year before he passed away, he remembered some things, and we were able to get his documents. But at that stage, just around about the time that we were applying for it, this apartheid rule of having to carry a dom pass, it actually was revoked, and he didn't need to have that paper. So it's a tragedy in the fact that he spent most of his life trying to find himself. So that's why I've called the story Finding Penrose. But he was trying to find himself, and he was trying to find sort of his identity and where he belonged, although, not realizing that all the time he belonged with us. He was part of our family, and he belonged with us. So that's the beauty of the story, is, that he always belonged, and he thought he belonged because he didn't have this piece of paper.
Now, I understand you made him a promise. What was that promise, and what was the emotional journey about fulfilling that promise?
Well, the promise was that I would write his story. And as we all know in life, life sort of takes us, catches us. And, I got married, I raised my son, moved to England, got, carried on with my son, got divorced, then found my soulmate, Ken, my husband, Ken Sheridan. And it was a few years ago when I was suffering. I was, in fact, recovering from an operation, and I had my mom with me. And I said to my mom, I promised Penrose 40 years ago that I was going to write the story, and I've always had the story in my heart. And I said to her, and I started telling her some of the bits of the story that I'd written, and started reading some bits of it to her. And I said to her, can you tell me more about him? Can you remind me about a lot of the, what he would have gone through, and how he came to be with our family? So my mom and I started talking all about Penrose, and she was, it was lovely. We were going down memory lane, and all of these sort of anecdotes started coming together. I wrote all of them down, and then I started piecing it together. But Judy, I quickly realized that it was it was a kind of story that would be fine just to share with family. But it wasn't the kind of story, if I really wanted to, get it into a book and, get it to be a bestseller and get it into a film, because it didn't really have the traditional story arc, the narrative that is expected, the dramatic narrative that is expected with films and with books. So I went back to the drawing board, and I spent a lot of time trying to weave fact and fiction, trying to make sure that there was this, that it followed this lovely story arc, that he grew as a character. And it was also very much about my gran and her growing as a character, because the whole story really is the friendship that my gran and Penrose had, because they were very, very close. And my gran did so much for him, and he did so much for her. He helped to raise myself, my mom. My gran had 9 or 10 sisters and 2 brothers. So he helped to raise so many people in our family. So but that friendship that they had was still there no matter what. And so I was trying to always make sure that I stayed true to the characters, which I have. So the 2 main characters are always true to them and their personalities, but at the same time trying to weave a little bit of fiction into the story to make it more of a dramatic story. And, you were asking about the emotional side of it. It was very difficult to start off with, because I had to try and make sure that I was able to protect those characters because of the love that I had for them, but at the same time make it an interesting story that people would want to read about, that it wasn't just a collection of little stories that had happened. So it was an emotional journey, and it was a lovely journey, because I started asking family, and family all started saying to me, oh, and I remember this and I remember that, and everybody in our family have now come forward and started saying what a wonderful man he was, and he was extraordinary in so many different ways, because he was so nurturing and he was so caring, and he made everybody feel special in their own little way. And he was just such a loyal person that he just, we came first. No matter what happened, everybody in our family came first. So it was a very emotional journey, and it's been an emotional journey since then, because I've now got some interest from film producers, and we're now developing the story as a film. So it's constantly bringing back the emotional journey. And there's very often times when I when I sort of have a little tear, because there was parts of the story that I actually had cried while I was writing. So it's kind of a heartbreaking story.
Yes, I was just going to ask you about that. You've evidently attracted the attention of a lot of celebrities and producers. And what do you think is the greatest impact that the narrative will have on the readers and on the audience worldwide? Having lived in South Africa myself, I have a pretty good understanding of the times that Penrose was there,
Yeah.
but I don't think a lot of people really do. So I'm really interested what impact this will have on people that are not in South Africa, but other places in the world.
Yeah, I think the important thing is what I've tried to do is I've tried to make the story a very positive story rather than focusing on the negative side, because there was a lot of negative in South Africa at the time. So it's really a story about Penrose and my gran and the friendship, the beautiful friendship they had, and how they always were kind to each other and always stuck together to each other. But in the background, there was a lot of really hard times, the apartheid era of South Africa. There was so much segregation, there was so much racial prejudice, and all of that is kind of there in the background. And because of that, and also with the whole, so many people were struggling with the identity and trying to find themselves and trying to find where they belonged in that world and where they belonged, when apartheid finished. And I think because of that, I think the main, I think a lot of people will the story will resonate with them, because a lot of this strife and trouble, there's a lot of it still going on in the world today. We have identity crises all over the world. South Africa had these, and they still have some problems and some issues. But I think the whole world needs to really start looking at the identity crisis and people wanting to belong, different cultures, different people. And these people are, they segregate because of a culture. They segregate because of what you believe or who you believe or what color you are or what nation you belong to or what culture or what you believe in. And, at the end of the day, Judy, we're all just people. We're all, flesh and blood. And, it doesn't matter, what color we are, what religion we belong to, what nation or, what we believe in. It's just so important to know that at the end of the day, it's all about humanity. It's all about us as people. And, if people come together, and this is what I'm really hoping for the story, is that people can actually see the kind of trouble that Penrose went through, because on a day-to-day basis, because he didn't have this Dom pass, he could have been thrown in jail any time of the day. He would go out, he lived with this courage, what I call daily quiet courage. And that's kind of what I've got from writing the story, is that, if the family needed bread and milk, or my gran, couldn't, if she had gone to do a shop and she'd forgotten something, apples, bananas, whatever it is, on a day-to-day basis, you and we would go down to the shops and we would not be worried about being thrown in jail. We're free. And Penrose couldn't do that. If he went down to the shops and if the police found him and asked for his Dom pass, he couldn't provide it because he didn't have one. And because he couldn't provide it, he could have been thrown in jail and he could have been beaten. And my gran was just very, very scared that if he was thrown in jail, that we wouldn't see him again. He would disappear. She was terrified of that. And but that's how he lived. He lived this quiet courage every day. If we needed milk or bread or whatever we needed, off he'd go down to the shops and he'd do his thing. And because of that, he was an extremely, extremely courageous man. He was very brave to do that. And he didn't ever think of himself that way. He didn't think of himself as brave, which is what is so amazing about his story.
Yes. Well, the book is fascinating to me, and having lived in South Africa and understanding the experience of apartheid and what people of a different color went through at that time. I just can't wait to read it, because I've heard it's really fabulous. So I want to
get a copy as soon as it's published.
Well, you've won quite a few awards for writing and for business, and even a bursary for film. And it's quite impressive. Unfortunately, today we're really, really short on time. And I'd really like to invite you to come back, and we'll do another day just about you and talk about all the things that you've done and accomplished. And I really want to thank you for being here today. And I want to encourage my audience to get the book, read the book. And can they get it on Amazon? Is it on
It's
Amazon?
not at Amazon at the moment. At the moment, I'm launching it on Kickstarter, and the reason I'm doing that, Judy, is because I believe in the story so much, and I'm so passionate about it, and it means so much to me. So what I'm actually doing is I'm launching it on Kickstarter to try and raise funds for the film. And if I can seed fund the film, I can put a bit of money into finding a casting director. And once we've got a casting director, we can go out for a director and go out for talented actors and really put, because I've also written the script, I've written the book, and I've written the script, the screenplay. So if we can actually get the story in front of talented actors and talented directors, then the story would be able to reach a wider audience. And I believe Penrose's story does, because of what he lived through, and because of how he just completely, with absolute loyalty and such ease and such courage and such hope, he just went through his daily life. So I think his story deserves to be heard. And because of that, I'm launching it on Kickstarter, so anybody can find it on Kickstarter. But it will be available in a few months' time. It will be available on Amazon and all the bookstores as soon as it's finished on Kickstarter.
Let's encourage people to go to Kickstarter and get a copy, because it would be great to have that fund the film. That would be absolutely amazing to have the film come out. So thank you. Thank you for today, and I'll see you again real soon.
Thank you so much, Judy. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for being here with us today. Again, I mean, what interesting people we have on this show. So thank you for joining us, and we hope that you'll come back again for another one of our wonderful interviews with some of these phenomenal women entrepreneurs from around the world.